Hello everyone. Let's proceed on to the next chapter, Peace of NCRT Political Theory. So, when we talk about the definition of peace, some people say it is the absence of war. Some people say it is the absence of violent conflicts. And for some, it is the absence of all forms of violence, whether physical or mental. So the last definition, third definition, it suits well with the situations and conflicts and the the pinnacle of conflict we have seen so far. Let's take the example of the wars we have seen, the wars we are seeing now. Just the fresh example, the current example are those from the war between Russia and Ukraine, the the war that is going on Gaza between Israel and Palestine, and the recent conflict in Syria and Lebanon. And other than that, the civil war that is going on in Sudan, and the operation of or the subjugation of Rohingya Muslim in Myanmar. So the list goes on, and it is only in the last couple of years, since 2022, after the COVID pandemic, that many such conflicts, especially in the Middle Eastern region, they have exacerbated. So, viewing all such conflict through the lens of peace, it the times are needy to present us with not only a definition of peace, but also some structural and some tentative measures that can bring a sort of lasting peace. So let's proceed on to the chapter. Yes, the first, the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche was one of those who glorified war. Nietzsche did not value peace because he believed that only conflict could facilitate the growth of civilization. These were the the ideas that were expounded by Friedrich Nietzsche, and he could not be called a warmongering philosopher, but yes, his ideas were rooted in the philosophy that since we are living in a limited and a resource constrained world, and everyone has everyone has their own self interest, their self realizations, their own aspirations. So the competition would follow, and with competition, there will be glorification of competence, individual competence or heroic competence, which in the biological or genetical term it can be called as this the survival characteristics. So whoever has the competence, whoever has the better survival characteristics, they would acquire all those resources. And since the acquisition itself would not end the conflict, the acquisition or the hoarding, it would be followed by mm, the future conflict to exchange or to acquire those resources by those who do not have them. So in short, his ideas on the growth of civilization were based on the the resource constrained nature of the world. So according to him, a civilization can make transitions only in a transitions only in a violent form. His ideas on civilization were really radical, which he believed that the civilization or the very act of or very nature of progression of a particular group of people in all their features, in their culture, in their lifestyle, in technology, in their academic level, in their mindsets. So in all such spheres, the the progression or transition, it it can happen in only in a friction with a grinding friction that screeches all those who who needed that place or who needed that progression. So this grinding friction, according to him, was the violent transition that will ensue when a certain section or certain group of people, they proceed from their status of civilization to a higher form. And another theorist, Italian social theorist, Wilfredo Pareto, argued that people who were able and willing to use force to achieve their goals constituted the governing elites, and he described them as lions. So he could be called a warmonger, one who highly insisted on the masochism or masculine power, but such warmongering or such hyper masculinity, it is it is still prevalent in many pockets, even in social media, even in the general media, in usual conversation on every nook and corner. But this is not to suggest that the cause of peace had no champions. So this cause peace, it had its own followers, and it occupied a central place in the original teachings of almost all religions. So the religion, around 4,000 of them which we have now, and out of which 10 are major religions that are composed by 90% of population. In all such religions, pacifism or peace, it occupies a central place. Mahatma Gandhi would figure prominently among them. Now, the contemporary preoccupation with peace can be traced to the atrocities of 20th century, which resulted in the death of millions of human beings. So these atrocities of 19th century are mostly the colonial exploitation, both the wars, the World War First, World War Second, and many such uh, boundary or inter-empire conflicts. And other than that, there was rise of fascism, Nazism, and world wars. We have also example of partition. Many of the aforesaid calamities involve the use of advanced technology to wreak havoc on an unprecedented scale. So what changed now, or why we are talking about peace in contemporary time, why and why the need to talk about peace and bring lasting measures can be felt is because the the present or the modern instances of use of force or the present instances of violent conflict, they involve use of advanced technology, and most of these technologies, they are inflicted upon helpless civilians or citizens. So so earlier, the casualties or the conflict, they would occur between soldiers or those who were entitled to fight. So I would say earlier there was an element of uh, a sensibility, a general sense that if war is fought between two empires, most probably in the highest degree, only the soldiers or the fighters would fight. And civilians would be kept out of it unless they want to loot, unless they want to uh, inflict consequential damages on cities or general population of any empire, and it happened. So it is not a new thing that civilians are being targeted. Even the Mongol Empire, they were feared all over the world, the Mongols, and they were feared because of their nature of loot, the nature or the savage nature by which they would inflict damage on whichever territory they want to acquire. they would not leave any stone unturned. But the modern preoccupation or the modern talks on peace also involve the the technologies. And the problem with the use of such technologies are there's the earlier savages or earlier those who inflicted casualties on civilians. So at the time, the weapons were very primitive, such as swords or spears. So one person or one horse rider or one Mongol soldier could not inflict multiple damages or manifold damages on any certain section. But right now, the use of advanced technology, it can cause a single bomb can cause a lot of damages. A single bomb can destroy a whole city or a whole village. So examples are given that during the Second World War, Germany carpet bombed London. So carpet bomb, it meant that the German air fighters or German airplanes, say they drop a whole volley of bombs on London street, and it resulted in death of many civilians. And it was responded by the British Air Force by sending 1,000 bomber raids to attack German cities. So on both sides, it was attacked, and uh, except the soldiers, civilians were the major casualties. Those who were eating in their homes, or those who were living their life as usual, and suddenly somebody is bombing on them. So the whole territory or whole surrounding would be gone by then. And the war itself, the World War II, it ended with the dropping of bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And the, the use of nuclear bombs, the one and the only instance, it resulted in 120,000 casualties. And why this question appears on many minds, why the nuclear bomb was used only once? It was because the earlier ammunition, non-nuclear ammunition, yes, they were lethal, they could cause damages, but the the damages caused by the use of nuclear, the explosion of nuclear weapons, it was really uh, lethal and devastating. So much devastating that uh, the moment the bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, little man and fat boy, or little boy or fat man, I don't remember it. But when those bombs were dropped, it at that moment, instantaneously, it increased the temperature. It released the temperature of around 5,000 to 6,000 degrees centigrade. So this is the temperature that is found only at the stars or within the deep interiors of any planet, even in our Earth. So this temperature of 5,000 degrees centigrade on the place where the bombs were dropped, this was unprecedented. No earlier ammunition, no other non-nuclear ammunition could achieve the temperature. That's why they were used only once, and those that were used during that time were in the range of kilobyte or in the range of kilotons, kts. But right now we have um, nuclear weapons that are in the range of megatons. So, and they are very much sophisticated and highly advanced. So use of such megaton and advanced nukes, it can it can be devastating in a way that we had never imagined, and we would never be alive um, to gauge the consequences. Then the post-war decade, it was marked by intense rivalry between USA and Soviet Union (USSR) for world supremacy, which was followed by stockpiling of nuclear weapons on large scale. because by then, since America became the USA, it became the leader or the initiator of use of nuclear weapons. The race to acquire more and advanced nuclear weapons, it started a death spiral of extinction. And the peak point of this intense rivalry or Cold War was the Cuban Missile Crisis of 1962, in which the, the 2 weeks during which it lasted, it brought humanity to the brink of total destruction. Now let's talk about the meaning of peace. So peace is often defined as the absence of war, a simplest definition, but it is also misleading because it does not give place to the armed conflict, other violent conflicts that are not that cannot be called war, such as the what happened in Rwanda and Bosnia and what is happening to the citizens of Myanmar. It it is not a war, but it is also a violent conflict in which many civilians, many helpless civilians, they are oppressed and killed. So the definition here it very well encapsulated that while every war leads to the absence of peace, yes, when war happens, there will not be any peace, but every absence of peace need not take the form of war. So now the second step in defining peace would be to see it as the absence of violent conflict of all kinds, including war, riots, massacre, assassination, or simply physical attack. So any form of physical violence, the second point that we are approaching to. So the absence of physical violence, it can also be included to clarify the definition of peace. Yes, but this definition is clearly better than one, but it is not complete. So, violence is often rooted in the very structure of society, and there are many social institutions and customs and traditions and practices that, reinforce such inequalities of caste, class, and gender. And these inequalities, these the structural attacks, or these invisible attacks, they can cause, they can also cause some psychological injuries. And such psychological injuries, they are not visible, as glaringly visible as physical damages are. But since they do have such a structural forms of violence, they also cause injuries. They must be included in the definition. So if any challenge is made to this hierarchy by oppressed classes, it may also breed violence and conflict. Yes, so such as the caste discrimination between higher caste and lower caste. So if lower caste, they rise against the higher caste, and such the very act of rising up, it may cause violence. This structural violence of this kind may produce large-scale evil consequences, and such violence are produced by caste hierarchy, class disparity, patriarchy, colonialism, and racism or communalism. So these are few factors, or these are few forms of structural violence that cause both psychological and physical violence. So right now, what this passage is intending us to include the psychological or structural violence in the definition of peace so that it can become a comprehensive one. Now, let's talk about forms of structural violence. You may heard about the untouchability. So these were the untouchability was part of traditional caste system in which certain sections of people who were not accommodated in the fourfold Varna system, fourfold Varna system, they were placed at the bottom of the caste system. And having placed at the bottom, they were faced with many such um, many such structural inequalities, many forms of visible and invisible injustices. Till it was outlined by the Constitution, practice of untouchability subjected them to social exclusion and deprivation of the word sought. Yes, this is how it could be rephrased in a better way. Yes, so those who were kept out of this fourfold Varna system, they were subjected to many atrocities, subjected to worst form of social exclusion and deprivation. And still the caste system has not gone, and the untouchability in visible and invisible form, concrete or abstract form, it has not gone away. Yes. While a social order based on class appears to be more flexible, it too generates a great deal of equality and operation. Yes. So some people say uh, the caste system can be replaced by class system. A class system is one in which every particular standard based on resources or some parameters, they form a group. So such such formed entities, they could be identified as such as certain classes. But such such class society, it will also lead to inequality in operation, such as between rich and poor, such as between uh, the aristocrats and general population, or elites and general population. Now, the second factor is patriarchy. Patriarchy is the rule of man, or rule of masculinity, or rule of father, and it also entails a form of social organization that results in systematic subordination against women. This is a systematic subordination because the concept of patriarchy, or the rule of father, rule of man, it is entrenched or inculcated in integrated in the caste system. And caste system itself is a systematic ritualized organization. Or you can put in another way, caste system itself is a system of rituals. So when patriarchy is integrated into caste system, this subordination of women, it becomes systematic, because then every forms of every such activity, every such traditional custom that is subjected upon women, any women, it get ritualized. It is solidified into all activities, all ups and goings, uh, all such events and customs of daily routine. Now, its manifestation include selective abortion of female fetuses, denial of adequate nourishment and education to the girl child, child marriage, wife battering, dowry crimes, sexual harassment in workplace, rape, and honor killing. So these are the instances, these are the activities by which systematic subordination of women is ensured. Now let's come to the third parameter, that is colonialism. Colonialism is the direct subjugation of certain people by aliens, or alien I mean foreign people. So subjection of people by those who do not live there. We have a taste of colonialism for around 200 years, and many African, Asian, and Latin American countries have had gone through such times when colonialism, it subjected subjected their people, subjected their inhabitants to worst form of exploitation. And even now, the the Israeli domination against the Palestinian territory, or the issue between Israel and Palestine, it is also a form of colonialism that has been going on. Now, the fourth parameter, racism and communalism, it involves stigmatization and operation of entire racial group of community. So it is to build stereotypes against a particular race and then practice a subtle form of untouchability or practice uh, discriminatory treatments. So such discrimination on the basis of race, it itself a worst form of exploitation, a worst form of discrimination. It is because when talk about race or racism, so according to biology, there are four biological races, that is Caucasoid, Negroid, Mongoloid, and Australoid. And now these categories, these biological classification, it is related with the physical characteristics or physical features. So such as if you have a white fair complexion, not just white, if you have fair complexion and you have a certain cranial index, it means the ratio of your head in terms of length and breadth. So it's a length and breadth ratio of your skull and other such characteristics such as the the diameter of your nostrils, the shape of your nose, then your hair, and a certain genes. So, on the basis of such physical features, biology has classified these groups: Caucasoid, Negroid, Mongoloid, and Australoid. Such as Caucasoids are people with fair complexion, they have wider nose, and Negroid are people who have darker complexion, and Mongoloid are people with flat hair, they have epicanthic fold in their eyes, and their complexion it is different. And Australoid, it is it resembles a midway category between Caucasoid and Negroid. But what my point is, these biological races, they are first they concern with very large population, and second, uh, the existence of such races, it is decided by their genes, it is decided by the geography. So both genes and geography, it has it has a lot of say, it has all the say in the appearance of such biological races. So if for example a negroid, person with dark skin is appears to have a darker skin and woolly hairs, the reason of which is the geography they are living in. So mostly the origin of the negroid race, it is on the tropical region. So this is our earth. If you can compartmentalize it into various sections. So this is equator 0 degree centigrade. This is Tropic of Cancer. This is Tropic of Capricorn. And this area, this middle section from Tropic of Cancer to Tropic of Capricorn, this area it is known as tropical area, and the reason of which is because the Earth has Earth goes through two category of motions. The one, it rotates on its axis, and second one, it revolves around the sun. So let's say this is the orbit around sun in which Earth revolves. So now this orbit, it itself, it is elliptical in the sense that it is constricted in the middle, but it is elongated at the ends. So it takes the form of an ellipse or an egg that resembles it. Now, when Earth is revolving around Sun, its its farther sections, those sections which are not included in the tropics. So the very reception of sunlight, it depends uh, on which side the Earth is. And both the sides, near and far, these are known as aphelion and perihelion. So aphelion and perihelion both means the distance of Earth from Sun. So if Earth is orbiting in such a constricted middle, the tropics or whole Earth, it would be near to the sunshine. So the area facing the sun, it would be hotter. But if the sun is at the Earth is at the elongated head, so the area which are farther from both, um, from sun and from the equator itself. So these area which are not in tropics, so the subtropical and polar areas, both are the areas which are farther from the equator. These area will receive less sunlight, so these area will be cold. Now the revolution of Earth in Sun's orbit, it it manifests in seasons. The seasonal variations are caused by such revolution, but you may have seen that the the equator or the middle section, the tropical section, it always faces the sun. So this phase or this direct exposure of such area to sunlight, it means the tropical area, tropics, they receive direct sunlight, or they receive sunlight for 300 out of 365 days. And the area around equator, they have 365 days of sunshine because they are directly facing the sun. So it doesn't matter if the earth is conditioned in aphelion or perihelion, means earth is near the constricted middle or at the elongated end. It doesn't matter because this this central area, this tropical area, it always facing the sun, and in which case it will always be receiving sunlight. So such direct presence of direct presence and exposure of sunlight throughout the year, it it causes a certain physiological and environmental challenges. So physiological and environmental challenges, changes, sorry, not challenges. So first, environment change, it is that the tropical area, the area near the equator, when they receive sunlight throughout the year, they have plenty of rainfall. Second, they have evergreen forests, and most of the land it is or muddy, muddy, watery. So there, the presence of water and other uh, factors are there. So bacterial growth, bacterial, viral, and microorganism-led growth is higher there. Higher bacterial and other microorganism growth, it is higher. And since it is higher, many such vector-borne diseases are also higher, such as malaria, chikungunya, Ebola, Zika. So these are vector-borne diseases. Vector-borne diseases are those that uh, in which a certain species it carries the vectors, it carries the disease-causing virus or microorganisms, such as malaria is carried by the malarial virus. It is carried by mosquitoes. In the same way, all such viruses and microorganisms, they are carried by many such vectors, many such species. And since the environment, the exposure of direct sunlight, the presence of evergreen forest and high rainfall and muddy and slimy territory, it ensures growth of many different form of or diverse growth of communities, whether microorganisms, macroorganisms, small or large. So in short, the species growth is higher in tropics. Since species growth is higher in tropics, there will be interspecies competition. The interspecies competition, it is very high in the tropics. So in case of such vector-borne disease, or in case of uh, the rivalry between any two species, whether it is between humans and mosquitoes, it continues unabated in the tropics. Now, what my point is, due to such intense rivalry, intense continued uh, ever-long competition, the species living there, especially the Homo sapiens that have lived there since the last 200,000 years, they have they have come up with many survival mechanisms such as production of melanism and hormones, melanism, and other such genetic changes. Now let's talk about the physiological changes. I have given you outline that the species that have lived there, if they have survived, so there are some survival mechanisms that are integrated into their very psyche, which are the hormonal production, melanism, and genetic changes. Now, the physical changes that are visible in the tropics, that direct exposure to sunlight may cause ultraviolet damages, because ultraviolet, the form of light that we receive on earth, so in tropics it is greater by uh, a high margin, 365 days of rainfall and sunshine, and the weather is always humid, which further exacerbate the growth of fungus and bacteria and many such microorganisms. So coupled with the presence of or the direct exposure of ultraviolet light on human body, it may cause damages. So such damage, it is kept away by the production of melanism in body. So melanism or melanin. Melanism is the process of production of melanin. Melanin is the hormone that not only protect our skin from exposure of sunlight, it also protect against many vector-borne disease. So the the skin complexion of Negroid people, it is because of this melanin production, and I have clearly elucidated why melanin is secreted. It is produced in greater quantity in the people from tropics. So these Negroids are the people who live near this tropical belt. So that's the reason we have their darker skin complexion. And in the same way, if we talk about Caucasoids, which have fairer skin complexion, and that is because of the same reason that the earth revolves around sun, and it is also tilted on its axis. So these area, these polar area, or these subtropical areas which do not receive direct sunlight, this area is subtropical, this is also subtropical, and this is polar. These are the polar areas. So these areas, when earth is tilted on its axis, these area, subtropical and polar area, they do not receive direct sunlight. They receive latent latent sunshine or latent sunlight. So in that case, their body, their physical anatomy, it need not produce melanin. They are not exposed of the exposed of ultraviolet rays, and when they are not being exposed to direct form of ultraviolet light, why would their body produce melanism? So if their bodies are not producing melanin, in that case, their skin tone will not be mixed or darker. Their skin tone will be lighter, and other than that, they are also devoid of many benefits that come along with the production of melanin. Melanin and melatonin, both of them also help in good quality sleep. Both of them, they help in protection against many forms of vector-borne disease and microbial attacks. So having a whiter skin is not a boon. It is harmful if they are ever exposed to such tropical lights or such tropical environmental condition. They are likely to face a lot of problems. Now, coming back to the NCRT chapter, yes, so racism, I have elaborated, explained the reasons behind the racial segregation or racial discrimination, and all the reasons that had been cited that the dark skilled people, they are um, they are not worthy of equal entitlement. This idea itself, it is unfounded. The idea was justified by such people who needed power, who needed to exploit people. But right now, in the age of knowledge, um, we do not go along with, and we do not accept such ideas. And Though the notion that humanity can be divided into distinct races is scientifically spurious, it has been used to justify insidious practices such as Negro slavery in the United States. Yes, so such ideas or differences or the lower mental quality of people with darker skins, it has its element in the social power dynamic. Those ideas were not justified at all. But what could be done? The slaughter of Jews in Hitler's Germany, apartheid in South Africa, all of such examples when only the skin tone, darker skin, and other such physical attributes which have been beneficial to people living in certain region, they have been highlighted by the people of fair complexion, and hence the racial segregation and racial discrimination was justified. And this racial discrimination, it is still going on in the West, and many and directed against many people from Asia, Africa, and Latin America, which are called mixed mixed races. Now, the psychological and tangible harm suffered by victims of violence often create grievances that persist over generation. Yes. So, if somebody who is attacked because of such nonsense ideas, because of his ethnicity, because of his color, because of his race, because of his caste, his gender, such nonsensical ideas, they cause psychological damages. And often the people have become so sharp that such psychological warfare, it is led and fought in such a way that people from all the said criteria, or people from all um, such such segregated groups, they can only grieve about the psychological attacks in a silent way. And these silent grievance, it leads to passive aggression. Passive aggression is like a simmering coal, a simmering fire that is hidden but that is still burning. And someday, when this passive aggression, it accumulates and becomes so high to control, become too high to control, such such bouts of aggression, they lead out in the street, and it causes damages on both sides. A just and lasting peace can be attained only by articulating and removing the latent grievances. Yes, the passive aggression and such psychological conflict, they need to be removed, so that simmering fire, such fire that is burning but not visible, they those events, those bouts of passive aggression, they are really harmful to not just the people that are being directed against, but the population, the whole world in general, because such instances of latent grievances, if they are not resolved, they keeps accumulating, and every such psychological attack, every um, such such trampling of their rights, or such subtle form of psychological discriminations, they only exacerbate or increase the amount of passive aggression an individual holds into himself. And there comes a time when it becomes difficult to control, difficult to hold back any longer. And in that sense, if the times are not favorable, if the conflict is already there, if physical conflicts and any um, such troubled times are already there, such passive aggressions. They are released onto streets and they cause unbelievable damages. Now, let's talk about eliminating violence. So, the Constitution of UNESCO, it says, since wars begins in the minds of man, it is in the minds of man that defenses of peace may be constructed. So, the Constitution of UNESCO, it talks about changing the mindset of people. However, we note that violence does not originate merely within the individual psyche. There are certain social structure. Yes, even if people can be talked into, even if dialogues can be arranged, even people can be brought together for resolving such individual and social differences, but there are certain structures that has been solidified. And as I had talked about the caste system, that the caste system, it has solidified the various forms of discrimination against the deprived people, and even patriarchy itself, it is a systematic domination of on women, because many such rituals and customs, the way that they are performed, the way they are seen in the present circumstances, in every tradition or in every festival, they only increase it, they only further solidify it. So unless the very social structure and their associated customs and tradition, they are broken loose, resolving individual mindset will not help much. So elimination of structural violence necessitate the creation of just and democratic societies. So one solution can be democracy, peace, understood as the harmonious coexistence of contented people. Yes. So it can be an encapsulated definition. Peace is the harmonious coexistence of contented, unsatisfied people, and this can be brought about by bringing people together. Now, can violence ever promote peace? Because uh, many warmonger communities, many more warmonger people and politicians, they hail war and violence as the necessary condition to bring peace, and which further cycles and intensify the individual proneness to violence. But such resort to violence, however well meaning, could turn out to be self defeating, because that sets off a cycle, a vicious cycle in which you start violence, some people are dead, some people face damages, and then their grievances, their aggression, it will be directed against you, and it will cause some damages which are not seen, which you do not hold dear, and in that case you counterattack. So such attack and counterattack, it this cycle, it will never end until there will be a time when the whole dynamic of or the whole issue of how the conflict started, it will be forgotten, it will be forgotten. Now, once deployed, it tends to spin out of control, leaving behind a trail of death and destruction. Yes. So this is the future of any violent conflict, is that this any any form of violence, it it can easily get trapped into a vicious cycle, because the the attack that is inflicted by one party on the another, it is not measured in definite parameters. It is not that if one entity, one opponent is causing damages to a victim, such damages would be directed in a measured way, and they would cause damage in such a way that only the desired result would be achieved. That that never happens and that has never happened. Violence is like a fire. When it spins out of control, it burns everyone in the proximity. So when violence spins out of control, it only leaves a trail of death. So it is for this reason that pacifists who consider peace to be a supreme value take a moral stand against the use of violence. Let's talk about one instance, one person from our own country, Mahatma Gandhi. So Mahatma Gandhi resorted to civil disobedience. Civil disobedience means to disobey someone in a civil way, disobey in civilized way. And it was his major mantra of struggle. So Gandhiji's deployment of Satyagraha during Indian freedom movement, by which he took a stand on justice and appeal to the conscience of British ruler, and when he talked them out, when he exposed their wrongdoings, and even if that did not work, he would put moral and political pressure on them by launching a mass movement which involved open breaking of unjust laws. So he broke laws which were unjust, such as the salt taxes and the historical and famous Dandi March. Mahatma Gandhi on non-violence. The tendency to equate helplessness with non-violence and non-violence with Gandhi has led some people to equate Mahatma Gandhi with helplessness. But Gandhi rejected this understanding of non-violence, and he did not believe he was helpless at all. Even this disobedience in civil form, he considered it a potent weapon. So according to him, Satyagraha, it was not some passive activity, it was active and potent weaponized activity. We usually understand non-violence to mean non-injury. So a non-violent act is thought to be one that does not cause physical injury, yes. But Gandhi changed this meaning in two fundamental ways. So for him, non-violence means not just refraining from causing physical harm, but mental or psychological or any form of loss. So, so at first, he hinted that it is not just visible damages that must be counted as a definition of violence, but other such psychological and subtle attacks which cause passive aggression, which hurts people. Those are also form of violence. So he shunned them all. So he shunned not just physical but other mental and psychological harms as well. So according to him, if you want to give up violence, you need to give up your mental violence as well. Yes, that means you should not think about violence. And in this sense, Gandhi's notion of violence was close to structural violence that we see today. Such violence that is systematic, that is prevalent in society in subtle and psychological way. And his second facet of his definition was to give of idea non-violence a positive meaning. Not causing harm was not enough. Ahimsa required an element of conscious compassion. So, and Gandhi was opposed to passive spiritualism. So for him, non-violence means a positive and active pursuit and well-being and goodness. So according to him, it was the mental construct of a people, or the what goes inside the hearts and minds of people that need to be changed. It was the gist of his idea that if people do not want to be violent, if they want to be non-violent, in such a case, they need to stop thinking about violence, not just physically but also mentally. So his emphasis on physical and mental restraint under gravest provocation, this was the basis of his idea. Now let's talk about peace and the state. So argued that division of world into separate sovereign state is an impediment to the pursuit of peace. So after the First and Second World War, the world was divided into many sovereign states based on nationality, demands, and culture. So it was thought that such separation or such giving away the sovereignty of people to the people which it belongs to, lasting peace can be ensured. A lasting peace would ensue. But states also tend to make distinction between people. So this separation of sovereignty or separation of people to bring about lasting peace, it has the other unseen dimension, which was to pursue their interests. Citizens or sovereign countries, they are willing to inflict injuries upon others. So the, the sovereign countries, they are also not bereft of such violent activities. Having made them sovereign, they have come up with their own reasons. They have come up with their own grievances of possessing their core interests, possessing their self-interest for their people. And such exceptionalism, such emphasis on the protection of interest of their own people, it intensify an us versus them dialogue or us versus them competition, so in which their people would be given priority and all other people, they may be put under injury or damages. So while the state was expected to use its force, its army and police to protect its citizens, but these forces could be deployed against its own members to suppress dissent. So now the third, another element that has appeared on horizon, which is now it is not only a case of a sovereign fighting of the other sovereigns or the protection of the interest of their people by sovereigns. It is also the protection of interest of those in power. So those in power in the sovereign countries, they may resort to use their military, their forces against their own citizens to silence any dissenters. And this is evident in authoritarian regimes and military dictatorships such as Myanmar, Sudan, North Korea, Russia. And the long-term solution to such problem lies in making the state more accountable through meaningful democratization. Yes, now different approaches to the pursuit of peace. And first such approach accords centrality to states, to the sovereign state, to their sovereignty, and to treat the interstate competition as a fact of life. Yes, so in this, the main concern with proper management and with the containment of possible conflict through interstate arrangement like balance of power. So in such conditions, in the first case, the first approach, at first, it accepts the inter-sovereign or inter-country competition, interstate competition. And the possible solution to which is interstate arrangements or interstate conflict management. And one such a solution such as balance of power, in which uh, alliances and coalitions can be formed to balance themselves against any major threat. The second approach, it it is also concerned with deep-rooted nature of interstate rivalry, but it stresses positive presence and possibility of interdependence. So, and trade is one such area. So it underscores social and economic cooperation among nations. And such cooperation may tamper with the sovereignty, but ultimately it may provide a mutuality, a symbiotic relationship, a symbiotic interdependence in which the two countries that are prospering in the terms of social, economic, and trade relations, which have healthy relationship on other non-militaristic, excuse me, non-militaristic. So then, such non-military endeavors, the political dialogue, diplomacy, social and economic activities, trade activities, they can be promoted so that such intertwined and interdependent countries, they are unlikely to pursue violent conflict in as the first resort. Third such solution is it envisages the emergence of supranational order and sees the fostering of global community. Yes, so here the key point is the highlighting of globalization, and other than globalization, it brings the talks of supranational order or talks of global community on the horizon, which means that other than the state entities, other than the military and uh, the higher elites, many such groups, organizations, and coalitions that have emerged, such as non-governmental organizations, multinational corporations, group coalitions, popular movements, social media, and globalization. So all such factors, so they are bringing about uh, a sense of global community and a supranational order, which means communities are aligned and joined not only in sovereign terms but in globalized terms. So this all these factors, they have already diminished the sovereignty of state, and these this order, it can bring a lasting world peace. Yes, the United Nations is said to embody all the elements of three approaches. Security Council, it gives veto power, which is a militaristic dimension. The Economic and Social Council, it promotes interstate cooperation in economic, social, political, and trade spheres. And the Commission of Human Rights, it seeks to shape and apply transnational norms. Now let's talk about contemporary challenges. First, the dominant states have asserted their sovereignty and sought to shape regional structure and international system, and had even resorted to direct military action against foreign countries, such as US intervention in Afghanistan and Iraq. The other such challenge is the rise of terrorism. Other than the this issue, the rise of terrorism, it I would highlight a newer form in which violent activities are resorted to by certain groups, such as you may have heard about Hamas and Hezbollah, and the recent conflict in Syria, in which a long dormant group, Al Qaeda, has played the cards. So what I am talking about, these groups, Hamas, Hezbollah, Al Qaeda, so all of these groups, once they were recognized as terrorist groups. And this form of terrorism, many developed countries, they have also supported, even given them, provided them with financial and material resources, so that they can be used as puppet against against other governments. So this uh, the father of terrorism, mm, fathers of terrorism are the developed countries. Um, What I am trying to highlight is that terrorism was started, it was given shape and the training by the developed countries. So it could be used against one another, and its beginning was made during the Cold War, in which both the US and the USSR, they used the Afghan fighters, the Afghan Pashtun fighters against each other. So if a, a certain section, a certain military section of those Pashtun fighters, um, it was given refused by the US to be used against Afghanistan. And once such purpose was done, US left them and they were fostered by the USSR. So in such a case, the genesis of it, the birth of it, it was held by those developed countries. Many European countries have also played with the idea of having terrorists as their own stooges. But since violence and giving foreign sections, giving such violent streaks, playing with such violent fire, they are likely to backfire. And it has backfired since the very country which has sheltered them, the very country which has trained such militaries, they were blown by the World Trade Center attack on September 2001. It was a striking example how the stooges that are prepared by you, stooges that are trained and provided with by you, can backfire and can act against you. And this is how the terrorism, uh, s- it has gone out of control. And now many such organizations, such militants, they are everywhere. They are everywhere in the between the India and Pakistan issue. They are in the Middle East. They are in the America. They are in the Europe. So this rise of terrorism is also a glaring threat, and n- the issue of suicide bombing and sleeper cells, both of which are lethal and deadly, because you do not know who is going to blow oneself up and when. So the global community has failed to curb the rapacity of dominating power and guerrilla tactics of the terrorists. And the case of Rwanda is given, in which one section, Tutsis, were murdered by Hutus in 1994 Rwandan genocide. Yes, but all this is not to say that peace is a lost cause. After World War II, countries like Japan, Costa Rica decided not to maintain military forces, and there are 6 nuclear-free zones in which the the very nuclear term, deployment and development of nuclear weapons, is banned. And such zones are Antarctic territory, Latin America, Caribbean, Southeast Asia, Africa, South Pacific, and Mongolia. Yes. Now, besides that, the contemporary era has witnessed rise of numerous popular initiatives that fosters peace, and those peace movement that has galvanized after devastation caused by First World War and the Second World War and the skirmishes and violent conflict going anywhere in the world, they are gaining momentum and they are increasing in number. So it's like a concept of herd immunity. If lot of people, if the majority they want peace, in such a case, the minority it can be silenced and the minority would lose the momentum, would lose the streak upon which to seek their agenda or to use violence to gain their tax. So this achieving of herd immunity by having movement that seeks peace, it can be a lasting solution. We have seen that pursuit of peace involves a constant effort to create and sustain harmonious social relations that are conducive to human well-being and flourishing. Yes, the pathway to peace can be blocked by many obstacles, but the use of violence to um, to counter s- such obstacle, it is risky. So the use of violence itself, it can blur the line between what you do, what you act to, what you resort to, and what you seek in the return. So if you are using fire to douse a fire, in simple, to use fire to douse a fire, it is a foolish idea. So using violence to counter violence is bound to fail, and only the activities such as trade, having a supranational order, promoting social and economic interaction between people of various nationalities, having a globalized communities, having giving space to popular movements that seek peace. So uh, all such activities, all such initiatives, they can develop a herd immunity against the use of violence. So the use of violence, it need to be stopped, and it should be stopped not just in physical but in the mental construct as well. If you do not want any physical violence, do not resort to any psychological violence. That's it. Thank you very much.